Hello and welcome back to One of Us. So I'm going to show some of the different game modes that are available in this video. So I'm going to have a quick run through. I'm not going to play a full game of any of them, but I'll show you what's available. So on this main section, this is the main game, but there are lots of others available. So on this left side are what I'll call the bases modes. So it's all sort of traditional real-time strategy game modes where you build a base, but all in sort of different ways. So in the rush mode, the AI income is fixed at just one times, so they'll get the same income as you, same rate of income from the crystals. And the idea of this game mode is to defeat the enemy in the fastest time possible. So you can use this to compare your friends. It record your fastest time, and you can try and beat your best and try and find a better way to beat the enemy quicker. So that game mode. So at 1 times income, I think most players would be able to confidently beat the enemy. But the idea is to try and find the way to do it as quickly as possible. Withstand is basically the opposite. On this one, the income's fixed at 3 times rate, and I think that hopefully at 3 times rate, the game is impossible to win. I'm sure someone out there will find a way, but the theory is that unless you found some glitchy way maybe to win the game, it should be almost impossible to win. And the idea is to last as long as you can. So whether you put up a good defense or whether you try and find somewhere to hide or something like that, to last as long as you can. And again, it records your longest time, and see how long you can do, and see if you can beat your own time, and see if you can beat your friend's time, etc. So that's that mode. Outbreak mode is quite a fun one. So you use the standard units, but only the infantry. So infantry available, and the enemy is zombies. The idea is obviously to the game's played slightly different in that because you don't have access to things like the naval yard and the light weapons factory, you can't do expansions. So the only expansions you can do are through building your base bigger to try and get across the map. But you're effectively against zombies in this one, and the zombies, when they destroy one of your units, will turn one of your units into a zombie. I think there's a 50% chance at the moment, so that might change in the future, but basically there's a chance that one of your units will get turned into a zombie. So you've got to look after your units in this, because when you start losing lots of units to the zombies, they will gain units and will become very strong very quickly. But yeah, it's very similar to the other game modes, other than restricted to infantry, very difficult to expand, so it's a much sort of a smaller game, and the zombies will turn you into zombies, so you have to watch out for that. Look after your units. So probably the medic's quite useful in that one to keep your units alive for as long as possible. We've got alternative controls game mode, which is basically One of Us is designed to be played as a first person controlled system. So it's a bit different than a normal real time strategy game. With alternative controls, basically it's fairly similar to how a normal real time strategy game would be played. So looking down. And basically the cursor, the control follows your cursor, so you don't have to scroll around the map. It's all sort of done automatically. It's a sort of more of a top-down traditional way of controlling a real-time strategy game. And there is actually something very similar that you can do with the mini-map. When we get into the adaptations mode, there is an advanced mini-map which allows you to control the game really much more like a traditional real-time strategy game. So you can move the mouse around with WAS and D and drag to select. It's very similar to this, but without the automatic map scrolling. You do the map scrolling with WAS and D, whereas with this it's sort of automatic. It just moves around with your mouse. But yeah, that's a more traditional way if people prefer trying that out. This mech survival game, which is still a real-time strategy game in the first person, but you are playing it as if you were in the mech. So You can only move so fast. You can't, gain height to be able to look at your units and control them from above. So it makes it harder to control, makes it much more, you are actually kind of one of the units. You can't shoot, but you are one of the units in the game. So it makes it harder to control your army. And also you have to stay alive. So you have a health bar exactly the same as all the other units. And so you have to watch out. So if you don't make it to the end of the game, well, then you lose. So you need to keep your unit alive in order to win the game. So you have to be very careful whilst also getting stuck into the action. So it's a fun sort of different way of playing the game. So in the middle here we've got Battle Royale and Mech Royale, which are very similar. So basically it's a sort of a Battle Royale with just units. So there's no bases in these, it's just squads. So each team has a squad of up to 5 and up to 5 units. And you basically are on the map, the same sort of maps as you play the normal game in, and you control your units and you go around collecting crates. There are 100 teams to start off with, so obviously you go and collect as many crates as you can to gain ammo and extra lives, and try and keep your units alive for the longest. And in some of the crates will be extra units. So obviously you can build to your squad by getting extra units and work your way up. So, you start off with just a minigunner and you collect extra units as you go to get stronger units. And maybe if you're lucky, get air units and get sea units. So you're, easier to avoid other players. But Battle Royale is basically played as you controlling the units. And Mech Royale is the enemy will be the same, apart from you are playing within the mech, but as a first-person game, as a first-person shooter game. So basically, you are walking around using WAS and D, etc., and collecting the crates, and they are giving you ammo and extra lives, but not extra units because you are the only unit in this, and you will, have to try and avoid other units whilst you're collecting your ammo to be able to destroy the other units and last as long as you can, and hopefully last till you're the last unit alive. So yeah, that's Mech Royale, and I'll go on to the ones on the right hand side in a second. So on the right hand side we've got 5 different game modes. We've got at the top, Escape the Tide. I didn't show you, but it basically records how well placed you finish, so you can sort of keep an eye on how you're doing and try and beat your high score, as it were. So Escape the Tide is basically infantry only. It's a bit like a Battle Royale, except the tide will rise. So the area that you've got to get to is the bit of land that is the tallest on the map. So that's kind of where you're aiming for, whilst also trying to collect the crates and destroy the other units. But if you end up under the water, well, then you'll start to lose oxygen and you will not survive for very long. So you need to always sort of be keeping yourself above the height of the water as throughout the game, as do all the enemy units. So the idea is to try and get to the top of the map as quickly as you can to survive, really. Zombie Nightmare is very similar, infantry only, apart from you're controlling the infantry, and the enemies are zombies in this one. So the difference with the zombies, they don't turn you into zombies like in the other zombie version of the game, but they because they're zombies, they won't attack each other. This one's a very difficult game because the zombies will only attack you. So you have to try and collect your crates and collect your ammo and whatever, but you will be the only ones that can kill the zombies because they won't go after each other. So that it's a very similar version, but it is much harder because you're the only ones that will be able to attack them. So next we've got Mech 100 of them. So in Mech 100 of them, basically there are 100 infantry, and you are playing as a first-person shooter in the mech. So it's very similar to some of the other game modes, but you are going around as a first-person shooter, and just going against the infantry, but playing from within the mech. Mech Apocalypse is again a very sort of similar but sort of a mixed up version of some of the other game modes. So you're playing from within the mech and against zombies. So it's kind of the first person version of Zombie Nightmare. Mech 100 of them is the first person version of Escape the Tide, effectively. And Mech 100 of us is basically it's the first person version. You are in the mech, but all the others are mechs as well, and a mech is an instant kill, so you have to be very careful to avoid going near any mechs that are ready to shoot, because they will destroy you instantly. So that's a very difficult game mode. You're going to have to avoid the others for as long as possible, and then time your attacks right to get near the other units at just the right time to be able to shoot them when your laser's charged. So yeah, that's that. And then we've got the adaptations game mode, which I'll go to in a second. So in the adaptations game mode, this is kind of where everything is available. So in here we've got all the game modes, we've got different maps, we can choose which buildings are enabled, we can change the factions, we can change the control methods, we can change some other bits that are just sort of visual, things like the fog cube size and the weather system. And we've got lots of other options, so I'll go through them very quickly. So game mode, we've basically got all the game modes here. We don't have rush or withstand available because they're just timed. You can look at the time to see how long you've taken or survived, but most of the game modes are available there. And then we've got different types of maps that we can play, and different maps from within that, so you can choose whether you have multiple islands, single islands, bridges, or I've got this sort of alien version, so you can choose different maps in there, and you can choose to make it a random map. And there will be more maps, but at the moment I've done those just to sort of test to make sure they all work okay. And if everything's working well, then I'll add more maps. But there's a few there to sort of get us going. We can choose which sort of buildings are enabled. So we've got we can make it an infantry only game, or a naval only game, or an air only game. We can sort of change these about to see how the game works in different ways. The only thing I'd say is that the naval only game, for example, if you had naval only, it might be impossible for the game to finish. If neither team can reach the entirety of the other team's base, it might be impossible for either team to actually win. So some of these may not work exactly as desired, but try them out, and hopefully you'll find that it gives a lot of replay value in that being able to choose different ways to play the game. So we've got different factions. So, by default, we're using sort of the standard faction, but there are various different factions available, or you can use all at once. So we can choose the player faction, and they're all different units. The buildings are the same other than the super weapons, but there's lots of different units there to explore, and they sort of work in different ways, have different stats, different costs, and different, and they obviously look different, they fire different. There's loads there, and you can obviously change the same for the enemy. You can have all different enemy factions. We've got different control methods we can choose here. So, as I talked about earlier, we've got the normal control method, the first person version that it's designed to work like, and we've got the alternative version, makes it a bit more traditional if you prefer that. So we've got we can change the fog cube size here. You can make it much more detailed, or you can make it less detailed if the computer isn't quite up to it. It's quite a lot for the computer to run the fog. So if you make it each one bigger, it makes it a little bit simpler. So that can help if the game's running a bit slow. You can try changing that system up. And then we can change the weather. So we've got either weather systems or standard sort of skybox systems. So we can change the weather to how we want it. Just sort of visually just changes the game a bit. And then down here we've got various different buildings. So we can individually turn off different buildings or turn them on. So we can play with, if we wanted to take out the naval yards and try the game without any navy, we can do that. Likewise for any of the other buildings. If you don't like the infantry, you could turn those off and try the game without infantry. So you can change which buildings are available there, which is very similar to how this works. This is kind of a quick way of changing it to just infantry only. And on the left here, we've got a few different options, which will change depending on the game mode. But by standard, we have the standard mini-map, which is very simple and allows us to control the game from it, and but doesn't give us a lot of detail. But we can change to advanced. I'll do another video on that. But we can have. It allows you to control the game much more like a traditional RTS game, and that's quite useful to use. And it looks better than the standard minimap. Standard minimap is obviously a little bit quicker to run, but if your computer can handle it, the advanced minimap is more detailed. I've got a flying bodies tick box there. You can make the when the units die, they jump a little bit higher, which makes it a little bit more fun. So we can put that on. We can control whether the enemy fog is there. So we can play a game without the enemy fog. So the enemy, as it is, has a fog system and can only go where, or can only see what it has where it has been. And you can choose to turn that off. So you allow the enemy to effectively see the whole map and kind of attack you more easily. Different way of playing the game. We've got an option for random start positions. So the maps start, with set positions for where the player and the enemy start, but you can make it random. So the idea is that with a random start positions and choosing a random map, it'd take a while to figure out, actually where you are, which position you're in, which map you're on, and it can make it much more fun trying to sort of find where the enemy is. You don't know which direction to go, you don't know which direction the enemy is going to come from, etc. So by default here we have reveal AI start position. So the enemy is allowed to see where you start from, and you're allowed to see where the enemy starts from. You can turn that off if you don't want to. If you really want to not know where the enemy can come from, you can turn that off, and it makes it a little bit harder because you don't know where to start building towards, etc. But there's an option there for it. You can choose if super weapons are on or off. Fairly self-explanatory. You can choose whether to allow ground and naval expansion. So obviously you can build the mobile building platform and the water version, the naval mobile building platform, and you can choose whether to have those on or off. And it changes the game dynamics because obviously by standard you can expand fairly easily in different ways, but you might like it that you can only expand via the water. That it makes the games just a bit play a bit differently, different dynamic, and that becomes a bit more useful when you play things like the multiple islands or the islands with bridges games. If you played those, you might want to have it so that you could just expand with the naval mobile building platform. Which obviously works quite well for when there's islands because that becomes much more useful. So that's just options there to make the game play a bit differently. So I'll go through just very quickly the options for the game modes. Oh, before I do that, we've got the difficulty level here. Obviously for anything that's got a difficulty level we can change, so we can make the enemy receive more income or less income. We can also change the crystal collection time delay here. So by default, it's 10 seconds. It'll take 10 seconds for the harvester to collect each bit of crystal that it goes for. And obviously you can change that. So if you want a much slower game, you can make it take 20 seconds, for example. And the game would, the money would come in slower, and it would slow the pace of the game down. And likewise, if you put it on 0, the money would come in much quicker, for you and the enemy. It makes the game just a lot faster. The enemy will be building units quicker, you'll be building units quicker, and you get stuck into the action very quickly. But it speeds the game up quite a lot if you do that. Okay, so the different game modes. So we've got what we call vanilla, which is the standard game mode. Outbreak, which is kind of the zombies game, and you'll see there's certain bits that get taken off when we change game mode. So here we can't change the buildings because this is a game mode designed for just the infantry and zombies, so it stops you from building certain things. And by default, it'll have like ground expansion and naval expansion off, but you can put those on, which will allow you to build the naval yard and the light weapons factory, just in order to be able to build those expansion units, not any of the other units, but it'll allow you to build those. And it again changes the dynamic of the game. You know, if a game that by default you're not supposed to be able to expand in, but you could then expand, and it means that you can play them on, you know, the islands map, for example, much better, because on the islands map, if you don't have naval expansion, well, then it's very difficult, almost impossible, I'd say, to get to the other units, get to the enemy's base to attack them. So you might find that on certain combinations, you would need it to be on in order to be able to access the opponent's base. We've got mech survival here, which is just the mech game, and much the same options available that we can change. Obviously, the control method is to be played in the mech, so you can't control that, but everything else you can choose there. And then the rest of the game modes, they're a bit simpler, so we don't have a lot of the options available because they're not bases, they're just for squads. So on the Battle Royale, we can choose the maps that we're playing on, and we can choose the amount of initial players, so we can make it there are only 10 teams or up to 500 teams to start off with. We can choose the factions that are available. We can control. We can change the control method that's used, the fog size and the weather. And we can change the squad size as well. So by default, you start with 3, and the enemy will start with 3 in their squad. But you can make that so that you just start off with 1 player each. Obviously, you collect them collect extra units in the crates, or you can make it that your squad starts off full at 5, and then until a unit dies, you can't collect any more in the crates because you're already at the full squad. So we've got a few options here. We can make it so that they're random enemy units to start off with. So by default, you'll just start with the minigunner or the equivalent, depending on which faction you're playing. But you can make it that the units are random from the start. So rather than everyone starting with a minigunner, everyone will start with a random unit, and you'll have battles going on all over the place because there's every different type of unit available. We can have zombies as well, so the enemy would also get some zombies thrown in there. The zombies in this mode don't, as I said before, don't take over the units, don't create extra zombies out of dead units, but you can have zombies in there as well, and you can do the same for the player. No zombies for the player, but you can have random player units at the start. So rather than just starting with a minigunner, you could start with tanks or air units or all sorts. So that's that. Mech Royale is much the same. It's all the same for the enemy. The player is limited just to the mech. You are as a first-person shooter in the mech, so you're not going to collect extra units. You're not going to have any extra units available. There's no faction available, but you can control all that for the enemy. You can control the faction and the amount of their squad size, and whether they have random units or zombies, etc. And then Escape the Tide. It's very simple. They are just minigunners. You don't have the factions available. There's no you can change the squad size again, but it's designed just to be the sort of the basic faction, minigunners or infantry in the standard faction. So that's that. Zombie Nightmare, again the same. It's just your infantry units against the enemy zombies, and pretty much the same with the rest of them. We've got Mech 100 of them, Mech Apocalypse, and Mech 100 of Us, which obviously all played from within the mech as a first-person shooter game. And in these types of games, we've got rising tide maps. So the only maps you can play on are the ones where the tide will rise. And there's a few of those available, but there'll be more once I've tested that everything's working well with these. There can be more maps available. And again, you can set the number of initial players available. And in the mech games, so Mech 100 of them, Mech 100 of Us, and Mech Apocalypse, you can change the control method. So we've got One of Us Mech, which is the standard controls, first-person shooter. you can use alternative mech, which is it's kind of a mixture between the controls. So you're still playing as the mech, but rather than it being a first-person shooter, you are using it a bit like a real-time strategy game. You are right-clicking, telling it where to move. You are doing the looking around and the shooting, but the movement is controlled a bit more like a real-time strategy game. And then we have a blaster game gun version available, which I'll do a separate video on. It's basically, if you've got the right piece of equipment, which I think is called a blaster game gun, you can control it a bit like virtual reality. So I'll do more detail in another video, but you basically can use the game gun to look around and shoot and all the other things in the game. Yeah, it's quite fun for a little different version of the game there. But yeah, that's basically all the options that are available in there. And yeah, I hope you have a lot of fun with it. And yeah, I'll see you in the next one. Cheers.